I'm Curt Dupriez, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the Lexus RX350h Luxury that I've been running around in the last 6 months as my long-termer, and it's a car that I've affectionately nicknamed Chief. Why Chief? Well, more about that a bit later. We often have a number of long-term loans of interesting cars which gives us a more intimate experience than we do with a week-long stint with your average press car. The key difference? Well, a week allows us to assess whether it might be the right vehicle for you, but 6 months allows us to find out if it's the right car for me. You'll find videos of our long-term fleet on this channel, as well as the introductory video to Chief 5.5 months ago when it first lobbed into the Chasing Cars garage with about 7,500 Ks on the odometer. Spoiler alert, well, Chief and I bonded pretty well from the get-go. Now that I'm counting the days to the inevitable separation at the 6-month mark, I'm going to assess whether or not that relationship blossomed or it tanked. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
As a quick recap, the 5th generation of the RX arrived early 2023 with fresh styling, turbocharged engines and a 5-seat only format. And since then I've reviewed the turbo petrol only 350 F Sport as well as the whiz-bang 500h F Sport Performance Hybrid, which should put me in good stead to assess the mildest powertrain in the whole lineup. So being reasonably light on price but pretty much big on everything else, the 350h Luxury is pretty much the key anchor point for the entire Lexus lineup right now. I still really like this khaki metal green exterior paintwork. I regularly get compliments from onlookers when it's clean, and it hides the dirt pretty well when it's not. I still think it looks handsome, premium, and distinctly different from the flock, even though 2 of my neighbours actually own 5th generation RXs, and one of them is in the same colour and is a dead ringer for this car. I do still like the 19-inch wheels and the extra compliance it brings to the ride, although I do admit sometimes I do pine for those sexier 21 inches on the F Sports. I really think that Lexus did nail the design of this new RX, whether or not you consider design to be the styling inside or out, or the usability and the practical packaging. It is a big rig, but as I've said before, it does fit the bill better as a 5-seater rather than being tempted to cram the interior as a 7. And another nice part about the design is that Lexus hasn't been tempted to smother it with an overabundance of glitz or rubbish. That last bit is really important because it really sells itself as a premium rig on solidity and execution rather than glitziness. So even though I got my hands on Chief with 7,500 Ks of hard flog press fleet kilometres under its tyre that's remained rock solid and squeak and rattle free. And even though I've added another 8,000 kilometres so far, it still feels gun barrel tight and timepiece slick. In fact, I really do think that Lexus is coming into a nice purple patch right now when it comes to integrity and build quality. Well, for the most part. And some of that quality compromise can be found on the inside, so let's go check it out again. So I've poured through plenty of RX cabins in the last 12 months and I still really like the look, the vibe and the airy space that the 5-seat format brings. But what about some of the details with the live-in experience? I could really give or take the comfort access that pulls the seat back and drops the steering wheel every time you get in and out of the car. You can probably switch it off, but it hasn't been so annoying that I've been forced to dig into the sub-menus of the touchscreen to find out. I still really do like the look of this Hazel trim, although the seat bolster in the base has become really conspicuously shabby. So in hindsight, I probably would have opted for a plummy brown colour that's offered called dark sepia, if I'd had the choice. I've gotten along with this lovely ergonomic steering wheel and the clear instrumentation like old friends, but the head-up system did start to bug me. The head-up is paired with these thumb buttons on the steering wheel, and it's really easy to accidentally nudge them with your thumbs and change audio settings or cruise control. But after a while, I did find out that you can turn the head-up display off, and those adjustments can be made through the driver's screen instead. I also discovered that you can dig through the sub-menu and switch off some of the annoying active driver assistance systems permanently. This is a really big deal for me because one of my bugbears of late have been cars that constantly rearm their active driver alert systems after every restart. So if you want to get away from that rubbish and not be annoyed every time you get in your car, the RX is your guy. It's the real lack of annoyances that have constantly had me reaching for the Lexus key rather than other cars in the Chasing Cars garage over the last 6 months. I really did like these RX seats the first time I tried them and I really love them now. Not only are they comfy and supportive, but they actually just feel like home, and more so than any other car that I've driven lately of any badge and at any price. What is a little bit weird though, is that the seat heating and cooling is paired to the climate control and changes automatically when you change the cabin temperature. I did actually find this pretty weird at first, but I also discovered that at a quick touch of a button, you could turn the heating and cooling off very quickly. However, what really started to bug me was the audio tone controls, all lack thereof. And whatever tone deaf scribe had this car before I did, cranked up the bass so it was almost unlistenable. I had actually spent hours pouring through sub-menus trying to look for the tone controls until one day I noticed these little inconspicuous 3 dots and I pressed them and hey presto, there were the tone controls. Of course, the whopping 14-inch touchscreen is light years better than the old system on the 4th generation. However, there are 2 things that I don't really like about it. If you've got 2 phones paired, it's a bit of a pain to toggle between them when you want to stream audio from CarPlay or Bluetooth. However, there are a few little tricks that you do learn, and I quickly became accustomed to those to be able to switch between phones pretty quickly. The other is the proprietary sat-nav, which looks elegant with its grey on white effect, but it's hard to read with my dodgy eyesight. What else? Well, I have found that the center air vents, no matter how far you try to point them away from you, they do keep on blowing air on your left arm. And the inductive charge pad in the center console is a bit finicky because it's angled and your phone tends to slide forwards and backwards to pull it off charge. However, there are plenty of things to love, and I still do completely adore these neat color climate control dials, the stubby little transmission controller, this wonderful 2-way opening center console bin, and cup holders that can actually raise or lower depending on the size of your cup. All in all, I really do like the front row of this car, and there's not a lot that I'd change for it. Right, let's check out row 2. Again, there's no need to bang on about the fact that this 5-seater offers a lot of space. However, I will point out that I haven't actually spent a lot of time in the second row. That is, I have a lot of friends and family who have spent time in the back here, and everyone remarks at how plush and luxurious it feels. And again, a lot of that comes down to the sense of premiumness in here, not necessarily the amount of features it's got. So, there's no slide or tilt for the rear bench. There's no outboard cooling or heating, and there's no window blinds. However, it does fit the stuff that you need, like USB-C ports, a 3rd zone climate control, and everything that's built in here is just really nice and plush. The quality of the front row does continue through to the back row in terms of material choice and build, and it's very impressive in here for what is essentially a base model car. Right, let's check out the boot once again. As I've mentioned quite a few times now with RX, because there is no 7-seater and it's a 5-seater, you do get a very generous 612 litres of boot space. You get 1,678 litres with the second row stowed, and that's big enough for all manner of luggage, plus 2 push bikes without having to remove the wheels. For around the last 5.5 months and around 8,000 Ks, Chief and I spent predominantly most of our time around Sydney. We've also road tripped up to the wine country in the Hunter Valley in Newcastle and the southern coast, but we've also done 2 interstate road trips to regional Victoria from Sydney. And those trips to Victoria allowed 4 separate full tank refills to see exactly the kind of consumption that the Lexus gets out on the highway. Because I really want to see what kind of fuel economy benefits I might be able to get from this 350h's 2.5 litre hybrid powertrain. So with 110 kilometres dialed up on the cruise control, the Lexus returned fuel economy of 6.2 litres per 100 neat. That's pretty good for 2 tonnes of luxury large SUV. However, it is 1 litre shy of Lexus's claim. Further, what I was really curious about is that this 5th gen's hybrid system apparently allows pure EV drive lifted from the old car's 68 kilometres an hour to 125 kilometres an hour. But I'd be lying if I said that I ever noticed that this car would go full EV mode at 110 on cruise control. So I repeated the exercise around town, full tanks, just urban driving, and Chief returned a fuel economy of 6.25 litres exactly on average. So that's a little bit closer to Lexus's 5.7 litre per 100 urban claim, and bang on exactly what it was doing on the highway. There's possibly better fuel economy to be had. However, I did initially try Eco, but it does make the powertrain just too flaccid around town. And then when you put it in a sport mode, it's just too eager to chime in with internal combustion. So I've essentially just left it in normal mode for the last 6 months. And that's exactly what you want, right? Just a set and forget mode that you can just leave it in the whole time. All in all, the powertrain is fine. Normal drive mode doesn't leave Chief lacking for acceleration and response. It wafts along in EV mode most of the time. However, the 2.5 litre Atkinson cycle engine will chime in without too much encouragement of the right foot. There is a dedicated EV mode. However, even when you force it into electric drive, it still doesn't take much encouragement for that petrol engine to kick back in. So far so predictable, but the real surprise for me is just how quick this 350h powertrain is. I've personally tested all 3 available RX powertrains over the last 12 months at our off-street test track, and the results have been pretty surprising. The Manic 273 kilowatt 500h hybrid managed a sizzling 5.85 seconds. Meanwhile, the turbo petrol 350F Sport, which outputs 205 kilowatts, managed 7.12. So imagine my surprise when we dial up sport mode in Chief with just 184 kilowatts, and it managed to throw itself down the drag strip at 7.17 seconds, or just 500ths shy of the turbo petrol F Sport. So Chief in the 350h powertrain format is measurably quicker than Lexus's 7.9 second claim. The all-wheel drive system also functions a little differently than I was expecting. There's 134 kilowatts and 270 newton meters on the electric motor up front. Then there's an extra 40 kilowatts and 121 newton meters of electric assistance on the rear axle that's on demand. But it doesn't really play ball like a lot of other on-demand all-wheel drive systems, which pretty much drive one axle until you break traction, and then it brings torque into the other axle. Instead, Chief seems to apply torque equally to all 4 wheels when you move off the marque every time that you move off the marque, and then once you get up to speed, it tends to dial off torque from the rear axle. Or at least, that's according to the torque distribution display on the onboard telemetry. Really, there's nothing about the 350h luxury package that really sort of encourages you to push on when it comes to corners. And that's fine by me. But it did strike me from the get-go that Chief really is a competent and cooperative drive all round. As I've settled in over the months and the umpteenth kilometres, it still strikes me as a really appealing and rewarding drive. And that's regardless of whether I'm putting it down the Hume Highway for hours on end or just simply whipping down to the shop for milk and bread. The passive suspension and the chubby 19-inch tyres have been absolutely fine. It's quite compliant, it's not too noisy, and generally it's pretty light on its feet. Let's face it, it's not the sharpest Lexus tool in the shed, but what it returns in pleasantry and manners is absolutely a fair trade. Would I change anything? Well, I'd probably like a hair more engagement and a little bit more body control, but I'm really talking very minor massaging to taste. I do wonder that perhaps swapping out these 19s for the 21 inches that you can get on the F Sport on this luxury spec passive suspension just might be the ticket. But unfortunately, that is not on the Lexus Australia's options list. Gripes? Well, the raucous switchover point from electric drive to internal combustion is probably the biggest bummer of the Lexus RX350h experience. It's very Toyota-like, and there are smoother and more seamless petrol hybrids out there, such as the Hyundai Santa Fe. Then there are touchy brakes, although you do get used to that when you do settle into the long-term experience. I've also noticed that at low speed and when it's pointed up hills, there is a slight flutter in the powertrain. But that gremlin is very occasional. But none of these small objections are anything like real deal breakers. And much like these wonderful seats, it's the Lexus's on-road manner that so often has me reaching for Chief's keys over any other cars that happen to be sat in the Chasing Cars garage. Ownership? Well, servicing is every 12 months or 15,000 kilometres, and Chief has just gently sailed through that just days before I hand its keys back to its rightful owners. And the service pricing isn't too bad for a certifiably premium car. The 6.2 litre per 100 kilometre consumption everywhere and anywhere is, for what Chief offers, absolutely fine by me. It does require 95 RON premium fuel. However, because it's proven to be just as quick as the turbo 350F Sport, that's all right by me. Bar a dash of wiper fluid and a little bit of extra air in the tyres, Chief has required absolutely no maintenance from me in the last 6 months. It's been faultless, dependable and unstoppable throughout my entire time at the helm. It's treated me really well so far, and I must say for the record, Your Honour, that I've actually treated it pretty well too. So it's time to respond to some of the notions that I proposed during the early days I had with Chief. Again, my personal preferences are a car that's automatic, that rides nice and has excellent climate control. The RX350h Luxury proves that it nails all of those things with aplomb. Given more choice, I would personally choose really comfy seats and quiet running. And Chief pretty much nails the first one, and there's a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to the second. I'd also originally suggested that the RX350h Luxury does appear right down my alley, and after 8,000 kilometres in 6 months, I can confirm as much. My relationship with Chief has blossomed, and I must say, with just days before I hand the keys back, that the separation will be very amicable and reluctant. Hand on heart, I'd probably continue to ride Chief off into the sunset forevermore if there was an opportunity to do so. And that's a pretty good endorsement for a spec and configuration that I was given rather than one that I chose. However, given my choice now, I would probably go with a 350F Sport in deep blue with dark rose and aluminium interior. And I wouldn't need any other options fitted in case you happen to be watching Lexus Australia. So why Chief? Well, you're going to have to head over to our website and check out our deep dive on this and other long-term reviews. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe while you're at it. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.